Start our meeting today with a flag salute led by our County Council, Gerald O. Cardinal.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, and we'll now proceed to our statement of meeting procedures read by our clerk, Ann Holman.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, October 7th, 2014. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has the discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all cell phones be turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. And this is that time that Ann discussed during our board where the public can come up and make comments on items that are not on the agenda. I want to be very clear that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone here that would like to make a comment about something that's not on the agenda, please come forward, state your name, your address, or the city where you reside, and you have the floor for 3 minutes. So is there anybody here that would like to make a comment? Good morning.
Liana Wiseman. I reside in Jennifer Montgomery's district in Bowman, 368 Kilham Road. Why are Placer County's mental health and criminal justice system involved in the decisions of private citizens that should be made by family and not the criminal justice system and mental health police? I have 3 cases currently in the criminal justice system. I am denied mental health services by Placer County due to disability. As with these cases, my attorney has a case. In the 2006-2009 Hannah Juseum case, there is 0 evidence. My attorney has a daughter who's in her 2nd or 3rd year of Yale, pulling straight hard A's as a Yalie with her own expectations. My attorney is a single dad parent asking for 0 assistance in both of his daughters' future in education. Auburn should be very proud, and why? Because of Scott Owen's own opinion, should a straight-A student be denied her excellent education. Her sister is equally as educationally talented. Both jury services in the Hannah Juseum trials were offered $22,500 million by Placer County for their guilt verdicts. Last November, my family was involved in an 8-party escrow process. Purchasing your first home should be as unique and memorable as getting married and having kids. Why are both Scott Owens and Andrew Braden involved, please? Does Auburn, as Placer County, honestly need a criminal justice system and mental health system? Actions speak louder than words. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment? Please come forward, sir.
Hello, my name is Michael Coder. I'm from the DeWitt Theater and the steering committee for the Save the DeWitt Theater. Several issues have transpired over a short period of time. A letter from the IRS arrived about September 10th, reinstating our nonprofit organization effective April 23rd, 2014. Just as our nonprofit steering committee was absorbing that news, we were invited to attend a meeting 6 days later with Facility Services and Supervisor Montgomery and Supervisor Wygant's aide and Facility Services. At the meeting, we received a request to make life-altering decisions and respond in 2 weeks with our intentions, including specific steps and timelines. We are absolutely thrilled that Costco's offer to preserve the DeWitt Theater in the corner of their parking lot. Our nonprofit organization has the intention to move forward with the requests. However, it is obvious that there are many unreasonable requests in an unreasonable amount of time. MMPVA Incorporated, it requires an expanded time frame to create and respond to all the conditions described. We're currently in the process of updating the basic organizational format of the new nonprofit, including fundraising for the preservation of the DeWitt Theater. We have a number of activities. We have grants pending. We're looking for conceptual and logistical support from Facility Services and the Board of Supervisors to make the DeWitt project a success for the people of Placer County. Music and More Arts Academy is therefore officially making application at this time for at least a 6-month or longer lease extension of our current lease. This will allow us time to continue solving the outstanding requests and maintain sustainability. It is the intention of Music and More Performing and Visual Arts Incorporated to move forward and reach a final agreement with Placer County and Costco for a land lease of the DeWitt Theater. And we really thank all the supervisors that have been very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? All right, we will move down to our supervisor committee reports. And I don't see any reports today, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just quickly, Supervisor Wygant and I just completed a trip to Washington, D.C. regarding the Placer County Conservation Plan. We had the opportunity to meet with all the federal regulatory agencies from whom we are seeking permission to issue permits locally under the Conservation Plan. Of course, kind of the key sticking point has always been the integration of the 404 under the Army Corps with the other permits, endangered species and the other Section 7 permits through Fish and Wildlife. And we went back there with a very specific list of items that we needed to make sure got resolved at kind of the corporate level, if you will, back in Washington with the Corps. And very pleased to report that the meetings were very successful in that regard. And we got a number of concrete answers. We had some representatives of the business community back there with us. We took a letter back that was signed by representatives of the business community, the Sierra Club, the Audubon Society, the ranchers, the farmers. So it was a letter that was universally endorsed by all of our stakeholders, and it was a real nice show of support for our efforts here that resonated very well in Washington. And we have one follow-up meeting here with the Sacramento folks of the Army Corps that should hopefully resolve all questions that we have before we start spending the money this board has already authorized us to spend on the environmental work. We wanted to make sure that we were going to end up with a product that was going to be fully embraced by all the stakeholders before we went ahead and started spending that money that the board has authorized. But I think thanks to the efforts of the business community that was back there, represented by Stacy McKinley, who's a consultant to the county, Bob Shattuck and Julie Hansen, and then Supervisor Wygant, myself, and Warren Clark. I think we're finally at the point where we have agreement amongst all parties of what the final product will look like and our ability to issue permits, and we may very well be fully in the throes of this final environmental document and get this thing wrapped up. So this was a key step. I wanted to thank the board for the authorization to go back there and get this resolved, and very pleased that we are where we are at this point.
All right. Well, thank you for that update, Supervisor. We'll now move to our consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like pulled? Okay. Are there any items that the public would like pulled for further discussion? Okay. I'll bring this back to the board for whatever action that it would like to do.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye.
Duran?
Yes. All righty. At this time, we'll move to our 9:05 Timed item, our Health and Human Services Administrative Services commendation to Ms. Cheryl Davis. So, do you want to? Would you like me to read this? Okay, great. I've got a proclamation here, and I'm going to be abbreviated. October 7th, 2014, in the matter of commendation honoring Cheryl S. Davis for her remarkable accomplishments on behalf of Placer County residents. Whereas Cheryl was hired as the Human Services Director for Placer County Health and Human Services Department on May 18, 2009. She is highly regarded as an outstanding leader in the human services area throughout the country. Whereas Cheryl has received national and state awards for creatively designing business models that maximize responsiveness to residents and taxpayers for exceeding public and private sector standards. Whereas Cheryl's 26-year career has centered on developing and implementing innovative and cost-conscious solutions to vulnerable state and county residents. Whereas Cheryl served as the director of the Sacramento County Department of Human Assistance, leading the implementation of welfare reform, moving 32,000 families back to work. Cheryl received the Best of the Best award from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and was named the Regional Agency of the Year by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. And whereas Cheryl served as the Chief Operating Officer for Project Home in Pennsylvania, securing funding to renovate a full city block of boarded-up homes into affordable housing for first-time home buyers. And whereas as the Director of Employment and Training Programs for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Cheryl reduced public assistance caseloads, improved access to services for seniors, and raised work participation rates in the Welfare to Work program from 15 to 50% in just 2 years. That ended up moving 16,000 families back to work, and the highest amount in Pennsylvania history. Whereas Cheryl has improved the Placer County Housing Authority from troubled status to a high performer in 2 years, plus served as the architect for the Human Services Call Center, which answers 120,000 calls per year and outperforms nearly all call centers in the state with a 27-second answer time compared to 60 seconds in the private sector. And that has received awards from the National Association of Counties and the California State Association of Counties. Whereas Cheryl has successfully steered implementation of the federal health reform, enrolling nearly all eligible county uninsured persons into Medi-Cal and covered California programs, becoming a model for the state and other counties. Now let it be known that the Placer County Board of Supervisors hereby presents its commendation to Cheryl Davis for her exemplary leadership in health and human services and her outstanding dedication to the residents of Placer County.
So good morning, Chair Duran, members of the board, Jeff Brown, your Health and Human Services Director. Today's really a bittersweet moment for all of us in Placer County, but particularly for the department. We're very happy for the opportunity to celebrate Cheryl. Cheryl's done some incredible things for Placer County, but it's very difficult to let her go. And I'd just like to say, as Chair Duran shared with the commendation, you know, Cheryl's achieved a huge amount in her 5 years of Placer County. She's achieved probably more than most of us will achieve in our lifetime. She was able to really translate from her experiences working as a department head for the state of Pennsylvania and also for Sacramento County and bring some of the innovation and some of the expertise directly to Placer County to really work with some of our very, very good programs. But Cheryl made them better. She made them great programs, which really became examples for the other 57 counties across the state. And then during the past 18 months, you know, the state of California has been struggling with the rollout of healthcare reform and expanding medical insurance options, particularly to low-income individuals and families. But Cheryl and her staff really took the challenge, really put in place infrastructure. You know, it was her leadership and really dedication to excellence that created a system here in Placer County that really meets the needs of our residents, and not just in medical insurance, but also provides other options for them as they move along the path towards sustainability. The one thing I'll say about Cheryl, she's always willing to take a challenge. Last couple of weeks we had the King Fire, and Human Services has the challenge of really working together with the Red Cross to do a shelter. And I could just see in Cheryl's eyes every morning, she was just dying to open up a shelter. Now, thank goodness we didn't have the need to open up a shelter in Placer County, but I am convinced that if that emergency had continued and we needed to work with our displaced folks, that Cheryl would continue to do what she always does, do an excellent, excellent job in taking care of our residents. So I just say, Cheryl, you've been an inspiration to all of us. You know, you're really the example of the best that Placer County has to offer. It's been an honor and privilege to have worked with you. We will greatly miss you, but we wish you only the best in your future endeavors. So.
Thank you very much. I'm very humbled by all this. It was very easy to work in Placer because you have a lot of rock stars out there, without the bad behavior rock stars. But I've always said Human Services has a bunch of overachievers, and when I came, I said, hey, let's go that way, and they just took off running, and I kept pace with them. And you know, organizational change by all the books is supposed to take 5 years. They accomplished it in 2.5 and started winning awards in 3 years. So a stellar group here, and I've enjoyed all my working relationships here in Placer. And know I'll tap back here for advice in my future, too. So thank you very much. Very humble.
Great. Good job.
Cheryl, before we go, I didn't realize that you had only been here since 2009, because I also came on board in 2009. And my experience in working with you has always just been superlative. Whenever I've reached out to you, you've had an answer, or if you didn't have an answer immediately, and your knowledge seems to be encyclopedic, you found an answer. Based on that, I thought you'd been here for 1,000,000 years, frankly, because you knew the system so well. But I really want to take the opportunity to make a special note and extend a special thank you as relates to Community House up in Kings Beach. Your efforts towards making Community House a better place for the community, for the county, and a better place for people to obtain the necessary services was really important to me and to that community. I mean, when you and I had the opportunity to tour that and we started talking about what are other ways that the county could help with this, you just thought so far outside the box, but within the rules and regulations and guidelines, that it just made what was already a great project so much better. And I hear every time I visit Community House how valuable your insight and your visit was, and I'm sure that that was replicated everywhere throughout the county, everywhere you went, just based on the experience that I had with you. I'll miss you very much, because you've been, just as I say, a delight to work with, and I wish you the very best in whatever you do in the future, because you're going to be amazing at it. You're the rock star, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Supervisor Euler.
You have a dedication and a passion for what you do that is contagious, and I appreciate the way that you engage with the community. And I forgot to turn on my microphone. Thank you very much. I appreciate the way that you engage with the community, and you do so with a sense of conviction, a sense of purpose, but also with a real focus on how can I help, and that's the way that you've always approached things, and that kind of attitude should be celebrated throughout all of our professional lives, but especially in public service. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for the save at that community meeting. I had my back there.
Supervisor Holmes.
Well, so much has been said. It's all true. The day you started here, you could tell that we were going in a great direction under your leadership. I appreciate always being there with a smile on your face, even when things aren't going as well as they should. And I appreciate your commitment to our municipal advisory councils coming down and explaining how they can get involved in the Affordable Care Act and those issues. You've been a great resource for me and for the rest of the county, and we wish you well.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much.
Great. I can't top any of that, sure.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, we'll move on to our 9:10 timed item. That's a proclamation to approve Placer Grown Week. And Josh, you want to come up and kind of give us a heads up on this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Duran and the board. Josh Hunsinger, Placer County Agricultural Commissioner. I'm just happy to once again thank you for your support of Placer County agriculture. We have a lot of great stuff going on, and this next coming up week is a chance to celebrate all that's great about agriculture. You know, we have a lot of hard-working farmers in this county. And, harvest time is traditionally a time when we take a little bit of time to think about that, celebrate all the harvesting going on, the end of the season, so to speak. Although in Placer County, we're really blessed with a couple year-round farmers markets, and so stuff doesn't, that's evidence that we actually have a good enough climate and weather here that stuff doesn't stop during the winter even. Next week is Celebrate Placer Grown Week, and it's a week we really try to concentrate a lot of different activities so that people outside of farming can get exposure to what's going on in our community. On this coming Saturday, we have the Auburn Wine and Food Festival in downtown Auburn with a lot of our local wineries pairing with some of the restaurants and other food vendors downtown Auburn. Then Saturday night we have the Crop to Tabletop Dinner, which I'm really excited about. This is something we're trying for the first time. You've heard that Sacramento County is the farm to fork capital, but that's really something where we've been way out ahead of that. They're kind of playing catch up a little bit, but we didn't even call it farm to fork just because that's kind of overplayed now. But what's neat about this dinner is the tickets are $35. A lot of these farm to tabletop dinners or farm to table dinners are up in the $100 range per ticket, and we really want it to be accessible to people, and especially something farmers could actually afford to participate in and enjoy. So there's still a few tickets left. You can go to placergrown.org and get a ticket for that. We have the Farm and Barn Tour, which started, I think, about it's probably the 10-year anniversary of it now, so that's a chance for people to get out to working farms and kind of, see sheepdogs working or walk through an orchard or all these things and really see where their food comes from. We have our farmers markets. The farmers markets are still going strong at this time of the year. They're starting to wind down a little bit, but they're still going strong throughout the week. And we have the Placer Grown Harvest Festival, and on Friday and Saturday down in Rockland, so that kind of brings farming to the city a little bit, and I think that'll be a really fun time, great place to bring kids. And then last but certainly not least, we have the annual Farm Bureau Hoedown on Saturday the 18th. I know a number of you have been very big supporters of that and faithful attendees. Do not despair if I just went through a lot of stuff you have in your bags. A rack card with all of the Celebrate Placer Grown Week events on it, as well as a couple of other nice promotional pieces the agricultural marketing department put together. We also have for you an official Placer Grown Taste Buds t-shirt. So we invite you, that's a little play on words, but we hope that you are all taste buds for Placer County, and so that's a little something for you as well. So thank you so much for your continued support of agriculture, and we hope you can participate in some of the great events we have coming up next week.
Supervisor Montgomery.
Yeah, Josh, thank you so much, and thanks to not just you, but the entire staff of the Ag Department and our partners at UCCE, but also, to our farmers and ranchers in the area. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss the hoedown. I am so bummed, but I will be coming back from a trip to Washington, D.C. This morning at Medlar's, I was encouraging everyone not to just celebrate Placer Grown this week, but to celebrate it every week and to really go out, buy the wine, buy the fruits, buy the vegetables. Right now, flowers, if you go out to our farmers market, the flowers are astonishingly beautiful. Buy some fresh Placer Grown flowers. Take them to a friend, take them to a family member, take them to someone you don't know in one of our rest homes or retirement centers. There's so many opportunities to celebrate Placer Grown and Placer Produce and Placer Ag every week, that we should absolutely just take full advantage of it. Having said that, I want to thank you for the specific focus on it this week, because I think it is important for us to recognize it, not just generally, but very specifically. So have fun at the hoedown. I won't be there.
We'll miss you.
Supervisor Euler.
Yes, Josh, for those people who didn't get a cool bag with a cool card, is there a website where people can
Well, there happens to be a website.
Well, how-
It's placergrown.org. Very easy to remember, placergrown.org. Thank you, Supervisor Euler.
Right, right, and I agree with you, Josh, that there's, in other places where they don't have the agricultural history that we have and that rich tradition, it is a big deal. But contrary to what they may say in a big city to the south, this is ground zero for ag. So, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks again for your support.
Thanks, Josh. All righty.
So I think we're being asked
Yeah.
to approve the
Yes,
proclamation. So
right.
I move that we approve the proclamation declaring the week of October 8th to the 14th to be Celebrate Placer Grown Week, and that we encourage all citizens to support our local farmers and ranchers throughout the designated week and beyond by purchasing locally grown agricultural products.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, hearing no abstention, motion carries.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Thanks, Don.
Great. We'll now move to our 9:15 timed item, County Executive Economic Development, a public hearing for issuance of revenue bonds by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. Mr. Snyder.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the board, Dave Snyder, Office of Economic Development. This morning we have two action items for your consideration. The first is to conduct a public hearing under the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act in connection with the proposed issuance of one or more of a series of revenue bonds by the California Statewide Community Development Authority in an amount not to exceed $50 million in total for 11 JPA partners, part of which includes refinancing for helicopter and equipment and property at our California Shock Trauma Air Rescue Facility in the Bowman area of Auburn, and also to adopt a resolution approving the issuance of these bonds by CSCDA for the benefit of CalSTAR to provide for the continuing financing of the project. Such adoption is solely for the purposes of satisfying the requirements of TEFRA, the IRS code, and California Government Code, Section 6500 and following. So the developers of the above listed project plan to use the initial proceeds of the bond financing in order to refinance a 2014 A note and then subsequent financing to provide for a new helicopter and related equipment and property at their facility in the Bowman area. In order to initiate the financing, the member participant of the authority which the facility is located must conduct this public hearing and approve the authority's issuance of such indebtedness. Although the authority will be the issuer of the tax-exempt revenue obligations for the applicant, the financing cannot proceed without the county's approval of the financing. As in 2012, when we brought another bond issuance to the board, these will be used for the project and will be the sole responsibility of the borrower. County will have no financial, legal, moral obligation, liability, or responsibility for the project or the repayment of the bonds for the financing of the project. Outside of holding the TEFRA hearing and adopting the required resolution, no other participation or activity of the county or the Board of Supervisors with respect to the issuance of the bonds will be required. So staff recommends that you adopt that you conduct the public hearing and adopt the resolution that's before you this morning.
Great, and just to clarify, Dave, for the public, this is part of a $50 million offering
Right.
that 11 other jurisdictions have to approve in order to become effective, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, great. That being said, unless there are any other questions of the board, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anyone would like to speak on this matter, please come forward. Once, twice, 3 times. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any, hearing no opposition and no abstentions, motion carries. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to our 9:20 timed item, Public Works Traffic Mitigation Fees Annual Adjustment. Stephanie Holloway. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Chairman, members of the board. Stephanie Holloway with Public Works. Today I have 2 action items, requests for your board. These are follow-up items from your July 8th meeting. The first is a request that you hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution to increase the capital improvement costs and corresponding countywide traffic mitigation fees for 10 of our 11 benefit districts to reflect a 2.8% increase in construction costs. This item was brought before you at your July 8th board meeting, and at that time the board requested that staff perform a detailed review of all projects in the 11 capital improvement programs and determine the current validity of those projects with community plan goals and policies. That work has been done, and we are happy to report that there's no changes that we're proposing at this time. We are requesting a cost increase in an effort to keep pace with industry labor and material increases. Therefore, we're proposing a 2.8% increase on all districts, all 10 districts except for Auburn-Bowman, which was approved at 4.2% increase back on July 8th of 2014. This request is consistent with the 20-city average construction cost index that's published in the engineering news record. And historically, this request has been done annually, but we have not brought it before your board in the last 4 years due to economic concerns. So in conclusion, we request that you conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution to increase the capital improvement costs for 2.8%.
Okay.
Any questions?
Unless there are other further questions by the board, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on this matter. Anyone would like to speak on this matter, please come forward. Doesn't look like anybody wants to talk about this one. Go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for its action.
Second, and just want to say thank you for taking the time to come down and project by project go through this thing and make sure that these are all still viable projects on the books. Appreciate it.
Great, okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any oppositions? Hearing none, hearing no abstentions, the motion carries. We'll now move down to our 9:25 timed item, Placer County, City of Roseville Joint Traffic Fee Program Annual Adjustment.
Great, thank you. So again, our second request is similar to the first, different program. Again, a follow-up from the July 8th meeting. We ask that you conduct a public hearing, adopt a resolution to increase capital improvement costs for and corresponding fee program for the the Placer County City of Roseville Joint Traffic Mitigation Fee Program. Again, a request to keep pace with industry labor and material costs. This program was also looked at in terms of project validity, and no proposed changes today. The request is to increase this program by 3.98%, consistent with an average of the 20-city construction cost index and the San Francisco construction cost index published in the engineering news record. This program is administered via an agreement with the City of Roseville that outlines a different framework for identifying a calculation of annual fee increases. The City of Roseville has already adopted this increase, and since 2008, we have not proposed an increase. Since 2008, there's only been one proposed increase, and that was in 2013, last year. In conclusion, we request that you conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution.
All right, barring any further questions, and I do want to thank Ken Grimm for a very detailed report on this particular item. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Close the public hearing, bring the item back to the board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, hearing no abstention, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you.
We'll move now to our 9:30 timed item, a proposed Placer County Transit Route modification, Highway 49 route near the Auburn Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members.
Thank you, Mr. Garner.
This morning we have 3 actions on this one. First is to open up and hold a public hearing to receive public comment on the proposed route change, which I'll explain a little bit. Second is to authorize the Director of Public Works to execute an amendment to the agreement with the City of Auburn to provide transit services within the city. And then third, approve the implementation of the actual route modifications by Placer County Transit, contingent upon the amended agreement with the City of Auburn. And so, as a little bit of background, earlier this year, at the conclusion of Placer County Transportation Planning Agency's unmet transit needs process, we heard from a group called Auburn Interfaith Food Closet that they were moving from Atwood to Atwood Drive to Earhart up by the airport. And as a result of that, they would no longer be on a bus route. And so we worked with the Food Closet and also found out there are a number of other organizations in the area around Earhart, around the airport, and also on Loxley Lane in the county, near Loxley Lane and Highway 49. I've kind of spelled out who those organizations are in the staff report. So there was definitely an interest in looking at a brand new or a new portion of a route. And so we met twice with individuals that represent those organizations. There's a lot of emails and phone calls, and we took a look at our route, and in a lot of cases we're not able to just go out and add service because of the cost of doing so. In this case, we have Placer County Transit has a route in that area, and so we looked at some modifications to the route. And in your attachments, attachment 1, 2, and 3 to this item, it shows the existing route, and then the proposed southbound, and then the proposed northbound, which actually both look the same, just the arrows point in a different direction. But what it does is it takes a portion of the route now that is what we kind of have some leftover time between the northbound and the southbound route, and we use it to run what we call the North Auburn Loop. And historically, that little portion of the route has been poor productivity. Last fiscal year, it averaged 7 passengers per day on 11 trips of that little piece of the route. And so what we looked at doing was let's propose to take away that piece of the route and extend the length of our route to be able to serve Loxley Lane and Earhart. And we have challenges in basically crossing 49 and Bell a number of times, the ways we have to circulate around to do that. And that's how we arrive at the routes in attachment 2 and 3 here. And what that does is while it takes away the frequency of service on the very small portion of the route, it expands the geographic area of the route to serve more areas. None of the stops that we serve now would be eliminated. They would still receive hourly service. The major portion of our ridership goes all the way to the Auburn station here to transfer with another bus. And there's very few, apparently, of these short rides in the loop area that we've described here. And so we feel that this would serve to meet the identified need from these organizations and also help possibly increase the productivity of the entire route, which would be good. So this part of this route would be within the city limits of Auburn. And with that, we would need an agreement with the City of Auburn. They've been actually coordinating with us to meet with these organizations and helping out. And they're well aware of what the route change would take and the cost. There is a cost in that it would add mileage to the route. But being that we're already out there on the bus, there's no actually additional labor costs. It all has to do with the mileage, so there would be fuel and maintenance. And I've estimated that to be $23,000 for an entire fiscal year. We have sufficient transit funds to cover that. The City of Auburn, if agreed upon, would contribute their fair share based on the mileage within the city limits. And so I know that there's some folks that are interested in giving some input, and so with that, that concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
Okay. In the future, it might be very appropriate to have the PowerPoint slide that we have in our book up there so people can get a visual understanding of exactly what's going on. So I will go ahead and open up the public hearing on this. Please.
Good morning. Richard Anderson, 25068 Oro Valley Road, Auburn. I am president of the Auburn Airport Business Park Association. I'm here this morning to speak with you about the need for bus transportation within the airport business park. Within the park, we have numerous social services organizations such as the Auburn Interfaith Food Bank, Pride Industries, the Sierra AIDS Foundation, Community Recovery Resources, and Seniors First. All of these organizations cater to individuals who, for many and various reasons, do not have the ability to transport themselves to those organizations and to take advantages of the services offered. Many of these people, some of whom are frail or ill, are forced to access these services on foot. Additionally, with the expansion of business at the airport, there's a greater need by common citizens for transportation to and from their places of employment. There is also a lack of transportation for visitors who fly into our airport and who wish to visit our local restaurants and shopping centers. The town of Auburn is sorely lacking in public transportation of any sort, including a reliable taxi service. At my business, I often receive requests from tourists to our town for transportation to our shopping districts. I've accommodated some personally, but cannot accommodate all. This results in a loss of both commercial and tax revenues to our city and county. With the approach of the winter season, we believe this transportation need to be urgent and should be acted upon as soon as possible so as to avoid our senior and or physically ill citizens from being further exposed to the dangers of the winter weather. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I fly out of the Auburn Airport quite a bit. I'm pursuing my private pilot's license. But my question is, I know that Pride is there. What other nonprofits are in that area?
The Auburn Interfaith Food Bank, the Sierra AIDS Foundation, CORE, a couple others, I believe. And we do have a letter from CORE as well stating their support of this action.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Supervisor Euler, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just, I wasn't clear, were your comments, you're obviously expressing a need for more transit, more transportation
Yes.
opportunities out there. Does that mean you're speaking in favor of what staff has requested?
Yes, we've discussed this in detail. I do have the same maps and reports
I
that
just
you
want
have.
to make sure that that's,
And we are in support.
you're in support. Thank you.
Yes. Anything else?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please come up.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Sandy Bassett at 1242 Shadow Rock Drive in Auburn. And I'm here representing the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. I am president of the board. And first off, I want to thank many of you for your support of the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. Many of you have been there already, and we greatly appreciate that. We greatly appreciate Will Wong and the City of Auburn staff for Will Garner, I'm sorry. Will Wong was wrong Will. My mistake. I gave you a promotion, I guess. Anyway, we are in support of the proposed bus route, and we greatly appreciate the route that they have developed. We think it will provide service to more city residents and to residents outside our immediate area. And it will do so with minimal impact and a minimal cost. And, you know, we've taken a survey since we moved to our new location. We moved there because the county environmental services said we needed to find a location that would house all of our equipment in one place and have the proper environmental requirements. And there are not many places in town that do that. So we moved there knowing that this had no bus service, but we were hoping that we could get bus service, so that's why we're here. We've taken a survey since we've been there, and we've found that about 70 to 80 people would ride this bus just to the food closet every month. And that survey has been from March until through September. So it's pretty consistent every month. And these people are people who don't own their car, or for some reason they can't drive. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And we have people who walk from the Auburn Greens, which is a mile, 1.1 miles, but it's up the hill of Loxley. And perhaps you might think they could walk there without too much trouble, but walking back carrying 4 or 5 bags of groceries is not such an easy task. Plus, walking up Loxley doesn't have a sidewalk. There's a safety issue. So that's one thing that this bus route would help. Also, there are seniors who live in the Auburn Ravine area who want to be independent, but they can't drive anymore. And so they want to be able to come to our food closet, but now they have to rely on someone to drive them. And they would like to be able to ride the bus. So this proposal would accomplish that. And as you've already heard, there are many organizations over there that would also use this service. So we are asking that you would vote in support of the staff's recommendation. We think this would be a benefit to all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Tank Miller. I'm Executive Director at Placer Independent Resource Services here in Auburn in Atwood Business Park. We serve people with disabilities in Placer, El Dorado, and Alpine counties. And I am a longstanding transportation advocate and serve on the Social Services Transportation Advisory Committee for Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. So we're very strongly in favor of this proposal. And so I wanted to not repeat what's already been said, but I really want to acknowledge the commitment from the City of Auburn and from Will Garner and Placer County Transportation and PCTPA, who also have supported the process in expediting this, making it a priority, and making it happen, because it is really important. And I just want to add that another role that I have is that I serve as chair of the Golden Sierra Workforce Investment Board. And I'm not speaking for the board this morning, but I'm well aware of the importance of workforce transportation. And I do believe this will help provide transportation for employees going into the airport area and maybe reduce some traffic on Vail Road, if I dream well. And I think it will increase ridership on the Grass Valley Highway route and enhance commerce in the airport. So thank you, and I urge your yes vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments on this particular issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for...
Second, and thank you, Will. Before we vote, I just really want to take the opportunity to thank you. This is one of the many items that I nag you on, and I really appreciate you moving this forward as quickly as you have. I know sometimes it seems like things happen very, very slowly, but this is actually light speed for government. So I really want to thank you for your commitment. And I did bring this item up this morning, and the meddlers, in my report to the meddlers, did have, I believe, 3 members of the Auburn City Council there, all of them who nodded and looked very happy. So I'm hoping that this will be going to the city fairly soon for their ratification of it as well.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All
Mr.
those...
Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Will for moving this forward, and also recognize David Melko from the Western Placer Transportation Consolidated Agency on the board that I serve on for his help in expediting this process as well. Thank you, David.
All righty. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, no abstentions, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, before we delve into our 9:45 a.m. Item, do we have, how many people do we have here that are going to participate in the Sheridan Community Plan update? One? Okay. I am going to make a request. Unfortunately, our District 3 supervisor, I'm sorry. Yeah, our District 2 supervisor, it tells you what I know, had an emergency on his farm this morning and had to leave. So seeing that it is his district and that this pertains to, I would request that we pull this item from today's agenda and roll it over to our next agenda.
Yeah, check with county council, since it's a scheduled public hearing, we might want to open it, take some testimony, and then continue it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Is that,
two people.
you want to do that? Okay, great. So why don't we go ahead and just take the testimony piece? Did you want to come up? Did we have someone that wanted to? Yeah, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Lee Bastian with the Sheridan Mac. I just want to ask your approval of this plan. I know there's been some changes. Chris told me that the Indian Committee wants out, but that's fine with us. So just want you to support.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Wayne Nader, good morning, Chairman Durand, Supervisors. I actually was going to wait until I heard kind of where this was going, but I did want to indicate, some of you probably know I have a long history in the particular area where this plan update is coming together. It's been about 30 years since the plan for Sheridan was last changed, so this has been quite an event, and I would like to say, as it came before the Planning Commission, that there were very few issues, and I credit that to the great vetting process that Chris has done and the rest of the staff. And I would encourage, and again, I know it looks like this is going to go on to your next meeting, but I would encourage supporting it as it's presented, because I believe it really represents what the community desires. Thank you.
Things. Next meeting's in Tahoe, so we may want to continue it to your first meeting in November.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone else that wants to discuss this matter? Okay, then we'll go ahead and close this opportunity here, and I'll go ahead and request that we continue this matter to the next board meeting that we have down here in Auburn. November 4th.
Is there time for it?
Do we have other timed items? Let's do this.
Same time, 9:45? Okay.
9:30.
9:30. Okay. All righty. Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll move now to our department items. Our first department item, Administrative Services Procurement, award BPO of the DPW Road Maintenance.
Good morning, Chairman Duran, Supervisors.
Morning.
My name's Brett Wood. I'm your purchasing manager. With me today, I have Desiree Belding, also with Procurement Services, and Stephanie Holloway with the Department of Public Works. We're trying for 3 since you already approved 2 of hers today.
All right. Hat trick.
Today, what we're here for is to request your approval for a blanket purchase order using a Yolo County competitively bid project for 3M Company with reflective paint elements in the amount of $559,000, funded by the Highway User Tax Agency revenue and Highway Safety Improvement Grant revenue with no new net county cost for a period of October 7th this year through June 30th of next year. We're also requesting your approval of a change order to our existing blanket purchase order 21232 with Ennis Paint to increase that BPO also for additional reflective elements in an aggregate amount of $250,000, resulting in a total contract amount of $410,000, funded by the same agencies with no additional net county cost. And we're asking for your approval, or for your approval for me to sign those change orders. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Desiree for some additional background.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Desiree Belding with Procurement Services. The history on this item starts back in March of 2014 when your board approved the purchase of a truck-mounted roadway striper for new reflective road surface striping treatment. In August of this year, the new equipment finally arrived and training for the operation began with the department's road maintenance division. Recently, the department was also awarded a federal grant to purchase all-weather high-build paint and optical reflective elements for roadway striping at various locations throughout Placer County, using a systematic application. Procurement Services collaborated with the Department of Public Works to determine the product needs, compatible with the striping truck, and the best way to acquire those items that would also meet the guidelines specified in the grant. One of the products required are reflective element and only manufactured by 3M Company of St. Paul, Minnesota. So procurement worked with 3M to locate a cooperative agreement currently in place with another agency, and Yolo County's competitively solicited bid matched both the grant criteria as well as our county's needs. In addition to the reflective elements, there is a requirement for high-build paint which works in partnership with the reflective elements, and the department currently uses this product on many roadways. It is purchased by way of blanket purchase order with Ennis Paint of Ennis, Texas. However, with the ability to install this product using the new striping truck, the need for larger containers is required. So procurement requested a quote from Ennis Paint for the product required for the new striping truck, which is also authorized by the U.S. Department of Transportation. The vendor has provided pricing comparable to a competitively awarded contract by the state of California. So with your approval today, a new blanket purchase order will be awarded to 3M Company for the acquisition of the reflective elements, and an increase will be authorized to Ennis Paint for the high build paint needed to make our roadways highly visible and reflectively beautiful. And with that said, I will turn this over to Stephanie to give you a little bit of history in regards to the awarded grant and the new surface treatment.
Thanks, Desiree. Yeah, like Desiree and Brett said, they asked me to be here to kind of expand on the grant that we were awarded and also give you some details on the striping product and our operation. So the grant was, we got the grant through the Federal Highways. It's a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant, HSIP. It's administered through Caltrans, but basically the focus of HSIP is to reduce fatal and severe injury traffic collisions throughout the country. Specifically within the state, the grant is competitive with all agencies, and we were awarded $1 million for that grant cycle. This covers a portion of the striper costs, which has already been purchased. Those costs will be rental costs that would be charged back to the grant. And then also striping materials, as Desiree sort of laid out. We hope to stripe about 165 miles of roadway with this new technology. The HSIP program is based on collision data, so it's a data-driven grant process. We currently have all of our collision data, and we analyze that on a yearly cycle. So it was fairly easy to put together that grant application. From this data, we know that run-off-the-road type traffic collisions are our highest collision type within the county. And of those collisions, a high percentage happen at night or during wet weather. So when we developed the grant, one of the things that we were focused on is how do we reduce nighttime wet weather run-off-the-road crashes. And the number one thing that popped out was high-visibility striping. So this is an effort to try to reduce that through the grant. Like I said, the grant covers 165 miles of roadway. Essentially, the material is what we call all-weather high-build paint, and what that means is it's a higher thickness than we currently stripe with. Many of our legends and stencils on the road are currently used with high build. So if you're out, you'll notice that the stencils, the arrows, are a thicker paint surface than roadway striping. The two other elements with the product include a glass bead, which we currently use, and then this special ceramic bead. It's actually a ceramic manufactured bead that's made in clusters. And what that does is during wet conditions when the roadway is covered with water, The ceramic bead actually gives us the option to have reflectivity through the water. A lot of times we lose that line in a high rain event, and so we're really conscious of those types of collisions. The high build is also a lot more durable, so we are hopeful to go from a yearly striping operation on those roadways to a 2 to 3 year cycle with the paint. And then also in Tahoe, we stripe the roads twice a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, to allow us to keep the stripe through the winter snowplow operations. So we're hopeful to maybe only have to do that once a year. And with that, we've acquired the truck, and we've done some training, and we're hopeful to go ahead and start striping come springtime. So,
David, did you have a comment? You didn't. Okay. Quick question.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the grant itself required all of these elements, the process, the reflective element, the paint, all to be to AASHTO specifications?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Any questions of the board? Any questions of the public? Yes. Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I fully support this action. But since Mr. Grimm and Mr. Tabor are here, I have to thank them for the greatly enhanced intersection improvement at Atwood Road in driving away. It's obvious that we want to keep that intersection clear. When I come down every morning, it's like, I got it. Thank you. It's been long overdue, and I'm interested to see how well that works. So I just want to thank you.
Same crew that did that work will be.
Well, that's what I thought. Thank you. I just want to thank you for that. And I'll move approval of the item.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Hearing no opposition, hearing no abstention, the motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move to our item number 9, the approved minutes of September 9th, 2014. And Supervisor Wygant was absent on that date, so.
Move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, hearing no abstention, that motion carries. We'll now move to our 10th item, Community Development Resource Agency Planning. Placer County Conservation Plan, Coon Creek Watershed Assessment Consulting Services Contract. Say that 3 times. So,
Good morning.
Jennifer Boyes.
Jennifer Boyes from Placer County Planning Department, here to talk to you a little bit about this item. It's part of our Placer County Conservation Strategy. In 2013, we were awarded Section 6 grant fundings, and a task in that grant award was to complete a comprehensive Coon Creek watershed assessment. So we're here today to talk to you, and the 2 actions we're requesting would be to increase the planning department's budget and revenue sources for the cost of the contract, as well as sign the contract. The amount of the contract is $399,000, $712, excuse me. And just a little bit more background, Coon Creek, the headwaters start up here in North Auburn near Meta Vista and run all the way down to Sutter County, ultimately ending up in the East Canal in Sutter County. And this comprehensive watershed assessment will provide opportunities for the PCCP to inform of restoration and conservation opportunities within this watershed. And in May of 2014, we sent out a request for proposals. We had 7 responses, and after evaluating all of the responses, we have selected Seebeck Ecosystem Engineering, and they have teamed also with H.T. Harvey and Associates, and they were our highest ranking firm. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And oh, I'm sorry. One more thing is, additionally, again, all of this funding request is covered under Section 6. So this is additional support for state and federals of our conservation plan and conservation strategy. And so there will be no net amount to the county.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the board? Any questions of the public? All right, I'll bring it back to the board for action. We have motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, hearing no abstention, this motion carries. Oh, actually, this is a budget revision, so we have a roll call. Apologies.
No.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Euler? Where am I here? Holmes? Duran?
Aye. Apologies for that. Okay, now we're done.
Thank you.
Great. We'll move to item 11A, Facility Services, Capital Improvements, District Attorney, Assessor, Tenant Improvement, and Building B. Mr. Unholz.
Good morning, Chairman Duran, members of the board. I'm Rob Unholz, Capital Improvements Program Manager for Facility Services. The item before you today is a request to award the job order for the District Attorney Assessor Tenant Improvement Project at Building B, number 4872/4864, located in the Bill Santucci Justice Center to Fregoso Builders Incorporated in the amount of $442,845.99 in budgeted net county cost. And adopt a resolution authorizing the Director of Facility Services or designee to execute said job order and delegating authority to approve any supplemental job orders consistent with the county purchasing policy and Section 20142 of the Public Contract Code. On June 3rd, 2014, your board awarded a job order contract to Fregoso Builders in an amount not to exceed $1 million and delegating authority to the Director of Facility Services to execute job orders up to $250,000. The job order for this project exceeds that amount. In December 2013, staff began work with MFDB Architects to provide the necessary architectural and engineering services for the project. The project manager and consultant team have worked with the department to develop the architectural programming, schematic design, construction documents, and have worked through the plan check and permitting process with the City of Roseville. The project consists of 2,203 square feet of tenant improvements required for the assessor to required to relocate the assessor to a vacant, unfinished first floor space, and 1,352 square feet of second floor remodel to the existing assessor space to allow for the expansion of the district attorney. These improvements are necessary to accommodate current and future workload and staffing requirements. The drawings and specifications were completed and given to Fregoso Builders for a pricing proposal. The final construction cost was based on quantities and tasks from the construction task catalog. Facility Services has reviewed the proposal and determined it to be complete and responsive. Staff is currently working with the contractor to identify efficiencies in the construction scheduling to deliver the project at the earliest date possible. Currently, construction of the TIs are expected to be complete by mid-January. In order to proceed, it's requested that your board award the job order to Fregoso Builders and authorize the Director of Facility Services to execute the job order. The total project cost is $625,201 in budgeted net county cost, including $442,846 for construction, $182,355 for design, project management, fees, force account, and contingencies. There are sufficient funds appropriated in the capital projects fund account 4872 and 4864 with no additional county cost. With that, I recommend approval and would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the board? Any questions of the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action. Second. We have motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, hearing no abstentions, the motion carries. Thanks, Rob. We'll now move to items B and C, Property Management, Fairgrounds Request for Proposals, Revitalization Committee. Mr. Rideout and our Director, Mary Dietrich.
Chairman Duran, members of the board, Mary Dietrich, Facility Services.
I'm here with Mark Rideout on two related items related to the Placer County Fairgrounds and Fair Association. I'd like to note that there are any number of individuals in the audience that are interested in this item, included Dave Cook, representing the RCH group, who assisted the county in the preparation of the Fairgrounds assessment, representatives from the Placer County Fair Association, and then other interested individuals.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mark Rideout. The first of the two items today is request for proposals and revitalization committee for the Placer County Fairgrounds. There are three actions associated with this item today. The first is to direct Facility Services to prepare an RFP to solicit for an operator of the fairgrounds in Roseville. The second would be to adopt a resolution to establish and activate the Fairgrounds Revitalization Committee. And then the third item is to direct the clerk to solicit applications for members of that body. This item follows discussion with your board on September 9th when RCH presented their comprehensive assessment of the Placer County Fairgrounds in Roseville. At that time, we discussed the vision for an event center in western Placer County and that it could take 5 to 10 years to develop such a site. To support the fairgrounds in an interim period, RCH recommended a request for proposal solicitation for a third-party entity who could launch a rebranding campaign and address the physical constraints of this site. Staffs looked at this process, talked with our RCH, and we project it could take 6 months to complete the solicitation and identify a new operator for the fairgrounds. To address the practicalities of the transition to a new operator, there's a second separate item on your board's agenda today. But to provide input on the RFP development and give future input on operations of the site, staff is recommending today with this item that your board create the 11-member Fairgrounds Revitalization Committee. We propose that all members of that body would be appointed by your board, 1 from each district and 6 members at large. This would be a Brown Act committee, which would be staffed by Facility Services, and the members would serve without stipend. To establish and activate the FRC, your board must adopt the attached resolution and direct the clerk to solicit applications for the members. Mary and I and the members of the audience that are interested in this are available to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Any questions of the board? I do have a couple of questions. Moving forward, there is, I guess we have some decisions to make with regards to the request for proposal. One of the questions that I have is, are we going to be, what's going to happen in the interim between the time at which we hand off, between now and the time at which we hand off the facility to a third party?
Right. That comes forward in the second item today.
Okay, all right. Great. Then I don't have any further questions. I know that there may be some people that want to speak about the committee. You can go ahead and take that at this time.
Yeah.
Anyone want to speak about the revitalization committee? Okay, I guess not. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board.
Okay, move approval of item 11B, 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
All right, we have motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposition? Hearing none. Hearing no abstention. That motion carries. So now we'll move to item B.
Yes.
Or C.
Thank you. And this one is relating to the Fourth Amendment that we discussed with your board on the 4th of September. Yeah, it was the 4th of September. And this is to provide direction of Facility Services on a Fourth Amendment to the operating agreement that's currently in place between the County of Placer and the Placer County Fair Association to operate the fairgrounds in Roseville. As we just discussed, the idea of selecting a third-party operator would necessitate a transition with the Fair Association. And to facilitate the handoff that we talked about earlier in September, we did prepare a Fourth Amendment to the operating agreement that would provide for that warm handoff. We provided that to the Fair Association, and in their review of it, they identified some concerns about exactly how that would work. And they had some concerns about another entity assuming control of the site after they had started planning for the 2015 fair. They have a willingness to schedule and conduct non-fair events and speedway racing until the transition occurs, but they're not comfortable handing off the fair once they've started the event planning, securing commitments of volunteers, and those sort of things. They feel very strongly about their management of the site and their commitments to their volunteers. They've also expressed financial concerns due to reduction in bookings of interim events, and they indicate that the current status of their operating agreement creates a diminished capacity to secure commercial lines of credit. And I'll just go back a little bit. When we were talking in September about the practicalities of their agreement, currently there is a non-renewal provision in the agreement. If your board were to take action before the 24th of October of this year to issue a notice of non-renewal, the agreement that's run from year to year would then expire at the end of the year. So to answer your previous question, if we were to issue that notice and the county got the site back at the end of this year, then the county would be responsible for managing the site until a new operator potentially is selected, and I'll get to some holding costs in a moment. If your board was amenable to proceeding with the Fourth Amendment, it has provisions that prescribe that handoff sometime next year, and so you could not issue that notice of non-renewal. So this agreement would extend through January until that occurs. So again, this diminished capacity to secure lines of credit and to meet their obligations and conduct the 2015 fair, they've requested a loan from the county. We received correspondence from them recently, and they anticipate this will be paid back after they conduct the 2015 fair in June. We continue to talk with the Fair Association. We received some additional financial information from them this morning that we'll evaluate, but they project it could be $100,000 that they're interested in receiving from the county to be able to continue operations until a handoff could occur. We do estimate that if we were to non-renew and their role in managing the fairgrounds ended at the end of this calendar year, it could be a $45,000 cost to the county to hold the site kind of in stasis until a handoff could occur in the middle of the year. So with all of that, staff requests your board's input on the different matters we've talked about today, the Fourth Amendment, the warm handoff, the loan matter. We're prepared, if you so direct, to proceed with negotiations and finalize negotiations for a Fourth Amendment with the Fair Association, and then we could return to your board on October 21st to implement any direction that you provide today.
When you're talking about $45,000 versus $100,000, would that consider maintaining, right now we've got basically a nonprofit that operates the fairgrounds with a paid manager.
Right.
Would consideration be provided within that $45,000 to maybe retain the services of that manager during that interim period if we decided not to go with the Fair Association?
The $45,000 was estimated as in a go dark scenario to keep the site, freezing pipes, keep the landscape nominally maintained, but the site would not be operational in that event.
Okay. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I know Dave's here. I have a couple of questions for Dave. There's a second part to this when we're talking about the fair that we need to, I think, flesh out a little bit more. Dave, in your report, could you kind of go through and just rediscuss the primary sources of revenue here, what seems to be making money, what doesn't seem to be making money, and then at the end give an estimation as to the feasibility, if you will, of a 2015 fair in light of the financial layout that you know very well. So.
Okay. To answer your first question, I'm sorry, Ann. Dave Cook, RCH Group. Thank you. So there are basically three components of revenue for the fair operation. There's the fair itself, there's the speedway, and then there's just non-fair interim events. And as our report indicated, from the financial records that we were provided and just the reporting methodology, if you will, it was not easy to ascertain when you looked at any one of those elements whether or not overhead maintenance costs had been allocated in any fashion where you could determine if any one of those standalone were being allocated their fair share of costs and therefore whether it was making money or not making money. Having said that, based both on the trend of attendance over the last couple of years for the fair itself, the one annual event, I would say of those three revenue producers, that is the weakest. The Speedway appeared to provide some solid revenue, but again, without the allocation. And the non-fair interim events also appeared to provide some decent revenue. I'd have to go back and look at my numbers. I wasn't prepared to get to that level of detail, but the bottom line is I think there is a viable revenue potential between now and next year's fair. The question is, what's that investment the board or the county would have to make in order to get through to that, and is it worth that investment to include operating that fair? I don't know if that adequately answers your question, but those are the fundamentals.
Well, I guess the bigger question is there time to assess the current contracts that we have for the upcoming season, both, that include the race portion, that include the non-race portion, the weddings, the use of the halls, the use of the property, and then, in addition to that, make an assessment as to whether or not the 2015 fair is going to be viable during this period of time. That's the big question, and what I would like to know is how much time do we have before we need to make an absolute decision on this.
I've not seen the information that apparently was provided this morning, and I don't know the extent to which staff has been provided with contracts or any sort of schedule that would lay out what those events look like, what the anticipated revenue may be for each of those between now and next year's fair. My sense is that the planning going on for the annual fair is ramping up, and they're not going to have a real good sense of commitments until a little bit later this year. Mm-hmm. But I would assume that there may be enough information available that we could help staff evaluate what is anticipated right now, race schedule, interim events, and at least provide some additional information that would give you some guidance and direction on what we think that looks like. And Mark, Mary, would you agree we might be able to do that by the 21st?
Yeah, it appears that is the kind of data that we received today that we need to comb through and make those projections.
And with regards to the capital improvement, I think your report estimated somewhere in the area of $1 million plus, possibly, to do some things in order to get it into a position that it would be a little bit more attractive for use. Now, is it possible that an operator could also come in, say, hey, we've got a great book of business, we can use this venue for some other things and other uses without that capital investment?
Yeah, absolutely. It was approximately $1.5 million, including contingency.
Right.
But that included such things as an expansion of the RV park. And as I recall, that may have been about $300,000. That may not be a high priority, particularly on an interim basis. That was our estimation of the types of things that should be done, but really in the context of a 5 to 10 year interim operation there. It's not unlikely that a new operator would look at this and decide that, for the first year, we're going to do some planting, we're going to do some additional marketing, and maybe that's $250,000. Now, one of the things, just to be clear, it's our anticipation and our hope that we might find an operator who's willing to invest, whether it's $250,000 or $1.5 million. But as we stated in our report, it's going to be a function of what return do they expect on that investment, what's the duration, what's the commitment that the county can make to them in terms of the opportunity to earn a return on that over that time period. So all this is going to be part of really the RFP process and properly framing what the options are and finding the right operator who is willing to, maybe the right operator is not going to invest anything, but they've got a program that shows how this thing's going to make money.
Okay. And okay, yeah, that gives me a lot to think about, because I guess, what I'm concerned about is the folks that have already planned. I know when my wife now, before she was my wife, planned a year in advance to book the Johnson Hall for our reception, And I know that there are probably considerable number of contracts that are out there, plus we've got considerations of a race season upcoming.
Right.
And my biggest concern is, okay, if we're going to make this transition, what is the best form of making the transition? Is it to continue on down the road with the Fair Association, or is it to hand it off to someone with new, brighter ideas in the interim, all with the goal that we know that there's going to be a change at that site within the near future?
Right.
So, I guess in order for me to make a decision on that big ticket item, I'm going to need to know who I'm going to be dancing with, for the foreseeable future, fairly quickly. But I would, so anyway, any other comments?
Dave, thank you. I just had a couple of, and maybe Mark and Mary, I'm not quite sure who should address these questions. I did have a couple of questions. The staff report indicates that award and transition to a new operator would not be expected until mid-2015 based on the action we just took. If the board doesn't give direction to you today that we're interested in continuing the dance, as Jack put it, with our current partner, at least through the fair for next summer, what does that do to the fair? Does it mean we just don't have a county fair next summer, or we have some sort of reduced county fair?
It would either mean, well, we wouldn't have a partner in place to put on either a full-on or a scaled-down county fair. So if we made other arrangements, we could do that, but terminating the association, we'd have to come up with another provider.
But the other non-county fair activities would continue?
No, the site would go dark because we would need an operator in place to manage the cleaning of the halls and the practicalities.
Okay, and then there were a couple of things in the staff report, and then a couple of things that I think, Dave, I may need you to answer. In the staff report, we had talked over the last couple of months about this possible assignment of rights, and the staff report indicates that PCFA expressed concerns that the assignment obligation would be problematic, assuming they would be planning and conducting the 2015 fair. Why would that be problematic if they're going to continue to be our partner?
Originally, we were looking at the handoff occurring roughly 6 months from now, which would be in April, and they have kind of an investment in the relationships they've made and the arrangements they have, and so they became concerned that that would occur before the fair actually did. They like to see the fair through this coming year.
But if I understand the assignment obligation, it's really just a placeholder until we actually come forward and say,
we have somebody.
We're acting on this.
Right.
It's just a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just sort of not understanding why that's an issue.
Well,
it's just a matter of timing.
Maybe this might clear that up. I mean, I guess we're getting into the minutia now, and the minutia would be the Fair Association, as I understand it, has a manager, right?
Yes.
That manages that. Is it possible for us to utilize the services of that manager in the interim if we decided not to go with the Fair Association through 2015?
Certainly. I mean, we could find someone to contract with. I mean, there are challenges that we've not been in that business before, but certainly we can.
Okay.
So the role of the manager, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit new to me, what does the manager do?
The manager would market for events.
Sorry, as compared to what the board does, just to differentiate between their roles.
Okay, so the manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations, securing bookings, arranging for cleaning, the logistics of the site, security, things like that. The board provides direction. They look at the events that are coming forward. They approve the different slate of events. They look at the financials and manage the larger business. But the day-to-day operations are the fair manager's responsibility.
And if I heard you correctly, the fair manager actually identifies potential clients, service personnel, and arranges the bookings?
Right. Yeah, it's their responsibility to market and secure people.
So if I'm understanding what Chairman Duran is proposing, then under a scenario of somehow retaining that individual, essentially the day-to-day operations of the fair could continue to move forward?
potentially.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just
Sure, go ahead.
whether the county contracts with it or it stays in the Fair Association, the cost is going to be the same. In fact, we might incur more cost if all of a sudden we try to figure out how to absorb a contract. I mean, the Fair Association is set up as a nonprofit entity that contracts with the staff for the purposes of the management. So I don't know what that gains us if all of a sudden we're simply doing that directly. And I don't know if we have the ability to do that directly without some kind of a bid process or anything along those lines. So I don't know what us absorbing that and taking it over directly gains us in that regard. To me, it's a question of the $100,000 loan that we're being asked to make, and what are the chances of being repaid on that versus the $45,000 sunk cost of essentially a shuttered facility. And so as I look at it, it's simply a question of, do I think if we loan them $100,000, we have a chance of recouping $55,000 of it? And if the answer to that is yes, then financially it seems like continuing to work with them as we transition into the fair for the new year and a new provider and all the rest economically just makes more sense if we think that we've got a 55% chance of getting our money back.
And Kirk, thank you, because that actually leads me to the question that I had for Dave, which is, last year, what was the profit at the end of the year for the entire facility?
There was none, is the easy answer. Numbers that we were provided are a little different than what I've heard. I may have heard a positive 6,000, but I think it was a negative number, as I recall. I've got the report, and I'd have to look at that.
And that's the piece that I'm struggling with in terms of this $100,000 loan, which is it doesn't sound like we're going to get anything back on it.
Well, what you may get back is not a return on that investment per se, but it's really looking at how important is that facility, how important are the commitments that have been made, the contracts with existing potential users, the liability for which may be with that association, but just kind of the big picture for the county, how important is it to try to help facilitate next year's annual fair? So it's really all those intangibles more than is it likely to help ensure a profit? You know, based on what we've seen and based on the trend, not likely. But I also see, and maybe I'm a little bit optimistic here, I also see an opportunity with the Fairground Revitalization Committee of getting in here, helping provide some support. And I understand to an extent the concern and hesitation about at what point does a handoff to some new operator become problematic or a concern to the existing association. But I think there are ways to address that when we get into the minutia in those negotiations where it's to everybody's benefit for that to be as seamless as possible. And our thought is that the FRC, a new operator, whether they take over the entirety or certain elements, all those things serve to supplement and support the existing operations and should enhance it. And I think that as we move along through these processes, both the Revitalization Committee and negotiations for an operator, we're going to ensure the success and the greater likelihood of some return on that investment, even if all that means is we have a fair and it's a little bit better than last year. I don't expect it to suddenly turn a profit. There's a lot of things that need to be done there, but we are optimistic that these are all steps in the right direction. So it's not just profit and loss. There are these intangibles and sort of the longer picture there that we see.
And David, that kind of gets into my point that Supervisor Euler was discussing about what's better, going down the same road or having a change. And that's really what my concern was, is that so far today I haven't seen any budget for the $100,000. So I don't know what it's going at.
Right.
And it's also, for me, an issue of control. And that's something that I also think that in order for me to make a decision on this is that we need to understand what are the liabilities if we take it back. What is the difference between the nonprofit moving it forward for the next 6 months versus us managing it in the interim with, I'm assuming, your assistance of some type. So that's kind of where I'm headed, and that's kind of where my head is right now.
And do we think we can have answers to that by our, I hate to say it, but Tahoe board meeting? Because it sounds like October 24th is the date at which we have to execute a Fourth Amendment or game over.
We could extend that date yet again.
We'll do the best you can, you know.
And we certainly, the plan was that we would spend the next, week as we're drafting this memo to dive into the numbers and really understand and provide answers to these questions if you want us to go forward and do that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I totally get that there's two pieces we're talking about here. We're talking about a very strict economic analysis, and then we're also talking about sort of the gestalt of a county fair and what that means. But I just don't feel today as if I could say, yeah, let's go ahead and look at a $100,000 loan, because I don't know what it's for. I don't know what it covers, and again, as Chairman Duran pointed out, I don't know what our alternatives really are as compared with that. Not helpful, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, any other comments by the board? Chairman Holmes, or Supervisor Holmes, I always want to make you the chairman. Maybe it's just you look like a chairman. Maybe that's one.
Thank you. Just so everybody will know, the very idea that the fair is going to go dark is a non-starter for me. It's not going to go dark. We're going to do whatever we can to keep it going until we get all the information we need. So that's where I sit. The $100,000, it may be a loss, but if you look at the long-term gain, it may be a worthy investment. So that's just where I am right now, but I will certainly anticipate some more information so I can make an informed decision. So.
As I understand the current state of the negotiations over the Fourth Amendment Agreement, the Fair Association, and they might want to speak to it themselves, is unwilling to sign the Fourth Amendment without a commitment from the county that they'll be allowed to operate the 2015 county fair. They're not willing to be required to assign that to a third party until after that fair is conducted. Is that the current status?
Yes, that is correct.
Interesting. I've never been told what to do as an owner of a piece of property. So I'm going to open it up to, I really want to get into this. I'm going to open it up. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Good morning. I'm David Henry. I'm the president of the Placer County Fair Association. And I guess I'm here to answer some of your questions. The board consists of 9 residents of Placer County. Board members have been on there from as little as 2 years to we have one member who's been on the board for 40 years. So I've been on the board myself for 15. We're elected by an association and serve a 3-year term. We have been struggling. We've been struggling the past 3 years ever since the state cut off funding for all fairs in the state. At that time, we were receiving approximately $200,000 per year in funds and in-kind services from the state. We tried to operate things on a shoestring budget at times. We got hit by several things that we had no idea were coming. It was also at this point we were just starting to pay off a $500,000 loan we had taken out to refurbish the All-American Speedway that needed a lot of work done due to safety concerns. Due to the design of it, we had possibilities of cars exiting the Speedway, and if they didn't have brakes, they were going to end up on Corporation Yard Road or further beyond through a couple of fences. So after taking that on, and then with the loss of the money from the state, we have been operating year to year, putting what we can into the fair. Haven't been able to make really any capital improvements since the Speedway improvement. So where we're at today is we were actually making some money at the fair. According to our bookkeeper, we were on track to make $10,000 to $16,000 per year above our expenses. But going into next year, what with I don't call it indecision, but with the uncertainty of whether the association was going to be operating the fair next year or another group was going to come in to operate it, we've seen a drop-off in requests for interim rentals, which is a prime source of our revenue. We have groups that normally would book with us for next year, holding off until they see what is going to occur. So the financial figures that were provided to facility services only have a half a dozen interim rentals for the beginning part of the year. The $100,000 figure that was presented is basically just to keep operations as they are this year, barring any future interim rentals from being obtained. That's utilities, that's a staff of 2 full-time people and 2 part-time maintenance workers, and just basically to keep the lights on. We have some regular monthly revenue coming in from a couple of contracts. We have a preschool on site that pays us rental for their school. We have a small model race car track, pays us rental. And we have a fairly decent RV business, brings in about $10,000 a month. But all of those are about $10,000 short of what our monthly expenditures are. Our utilities run anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000 a month alone, just for the facility. So it's not, as they were talking about the Fourth Amendment, it's not that we want to operate the fair through the fair next year, is that we want to make sure that our staff is involved with whoever is picked by the county to take over operations of the fair. It's the staff that knows what contracts have been signed up to that point. It's the staff that knows how the facilities are set up, how all the infrastructure works. We as a board want to see the fair continue. Whether it's by the association or it's by an outside party, we want to see it run. There's thousands of people that use that fairgrounds every year. There's hundreds of kids there at the fair time with the 4-H and FFA that are from all the districts of the county, participating either in the livestock or in the other exhibits. And I think it would be a big disservice if they didn't have that opportunity for next year. The problem we have right now is that we should be planning and well underway with planning for the fair next year, and without being assured that we're going to be operating the fair, we don't think we could go out and legally enter into contracts with any groups, whether an interim rental or for vendors for the fair. So that's where we're at right now. Our funds would probably last us through January at the current rate of expenditure and with what we have lined up for interim rentals.
And I can appreciate that, and I think the association's done what it could do. It's been here to manage those resources, but you have to understand my predicament here.
Oh, I completely understand. I'm a businessman. I know.
I've just heard our consultant tell us that in his opinion that the viability of the fair is the weakest link here. And I get the tradition and the history and all of that, but what my biggest concern is, and I have to tell you that it takes a lot of stones to tell the county that they're not going to sign an agreement unless and until something happens. I've got a big problem with that, but I get it. You don't have to respond to it. I'm just letting you know that's what I'm hearing, and that's my position as to why I'm looking at someone else to do it rather than the association, because I fundamentally, when you're a property owner, you have a lot of rights to that property, and for someone that is in a position to manage that property, to tell the owner of that property that we're not going to play your game, I got a problem with it. But again, I understand where you're coming from. The fair is an important thing, and I'll leave it at that. So.
Well, it's not that we are unwilling to sign it. It's just we wanted some assurances that there would be a continuation between the new owner and the current staff. Now, I know staffing is the right of a new owner of a management agreement. We just think it's important that with the management we have in place, that they be considered as part of an extension. If we get through the fair and the operator decides he wants somebody else, that's well within his rights. We're just trying to make our expression known that we would like to see some continuation there. the agreement called for a 6-day handoff. And, in business, when I've been in businesses, when you sell a business, usually you have somebody there for 6 months to a year to make sure that the new owner knows what's going on and how things operate. And that's what we're looking at. We just want to look for a longer period than just 6 days.
I get it. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other people that want to come up and chat?
Chairman Duran and the Board of Supervisors, my name is Bill McAnally. Address is 8433 Eva Lane, Roseville. Been involved with the fairgrounds and the Speedway for many years. Started racing out there at the entry-level division and worked my way up through that to that being my primary source of income, and actually make a living racing. And we also own an automotive repair shop in Roseville. But just to give you an example of some of the issues that are at stand, I've talked to Carrie about, I rent the Speedway once a year to bring the NASCAR K&N Series in. Not that I'm a race promoter, but the Fair Board couldn't take the risk of bringing that kind of event in. It's multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to put on an event like we are this Saturday night. We've got a lot of different community clubs and organizations now involved in that race. Placer Valley Tourism has honored us with it being one of the biggest single-day events that comes to Placer County and brings people into our county. I enjoy doing it. It's really rewarding, and I want to continue doing that. It makes money for the fairgrounds. I think I'm one of their largest event tenants. I don't know that for a fact, but I've been told that. And the problem I have right now is NASCAR, to bring national television here and do the event, they're scheduling now. They've actually put off their schedule till this meeting today, because I wanted to bring it to your attention. The Fair Board isn't in a position. I met with Carrie, the fair manager. She can't guarantee me a rental for next year. I've called Mary, and she said that, the position they're in, they can't because they don't know if they're going to have the facility next October. So I see this as a problem. It's something we've worked very hard for the last 8 years to build continuity so that it's on this weekend. It's the Fall Classic. We've got 40 late model local cars that are actually coming from all over Northern California to be the undercard to the K&N event. And we just want to keep this going, but nobody can guarantee me rental, and that's a problem. You're going to let your biggest tenant walk away, and we're going to blow the continuity of a big event that we've worked hard to build. A lot of people, a lot of businesses in the community have worked hard to help build this event, as they did to do the improvements to the Speedway when that happened. But I just don't know what to do, so I'm asking your advice on that.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Hi, my name is John Javidon, 9631 Baseline Road, unincorporated Placer County. I am the producer of Berry Fest, Strawberry Festival in Roseville, and it's on Mother's Day weekend traditionally, May 9th and 10th next year. And I'm in the same position as Bill is, that I don't have a contract for next year's event. And I've heard from other event coordinators as well that are worried about and actually looking for other locations to have their events because they're scared that they're not going to have somewhere to have it. I give them as much assurance that I'm sticking it out, but going dark is a scary option for 6 months for the facility. It'd be really hard for someone to go in there after it had been dark for 6 months and try to revitalize. I also want to support the president of the fair's request. Though I haven't spoken to him, it would be very difficult and I think and unfair to ask a new manager or whoever's running the fair to come in maybe a week or two or a month before the fair and put on a fair, even if it had been pre-coordinated by the previous management. They're going to collect lots of vendor fees and sponsorships and everything beforehand, and so that could be a messy transition. It might be the easiest for everyone for if whoever starts the coordinating of the fair finishes the coordinating of the fair. I could just see a really messy transaction period there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's a thoughtful comment you made.
And part of the difficulty in the contracting process is the contrast between the current operator shall complete the assignment within 5 business days following written notice, and the provision on contracting authority that says it shall not enter into contracts which extend beyond December 31, 2015 without prior written consent of the county. So it really puts it seems to at the same time say the contractor can continue to operate the Placer County Fair as a property as if they always have, but at the same time, when the county gets a new operator, they may, within 5 days, require that the contract be assigned to a new third party. So it puts the current Fair Association in a can't-win situation.
Well, sorry, but if the strategy that we came up with was to sort of book a calendar of events and using the county's standard forms. And so when we put out the RFP, stapled behind it would be a list of next year's events that the Fair Association would have contracted for as they run through the end of this year up to whenever the assignment occurs. So the thought was, with the short turnover, everything would be standard form, everybody would understand, and you could go forward that way.
But just so I'm clear, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to be one, just so I'm clear, the Fair Association under this Fourth Amendment would have the authority approved by us to enter into contracts through the end of 2015. So
Right.
that would cover the operational period for next year's fair.
For the fair, for racing, yes.
So what would an assignment do to that? It wouldn't invalidate any of the contracts. It would just move ownership from the Fair Association to whoever that new entity was, correct?
That's the strategy, yes.
Because I think maybe I didn't hear correctly what the gentleman from the Fair Association expressed, but his concern was that they couldn't enter into contracts for next summer because of this insecurity. And again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to get into the nuance of the contract, but it appears to me on the plain face of it that they are able to enter into those contracts. And if indeed an assignment action does come forward, that wouldn't change the validity of those contracts or their ability legally to enter into them.
Correct.
Yeah, you could say the county would be standing behind those contracts rather than the Fair Association.
Sure.
And that's probably a position the Fair Association is not used to being in, that they can't stand behind their own contracts.
So I'm just thinking this forward in terms of, yes, I'm with Supervisor Holmes. I don't want to see the fair go dark next summer. It sounds to me that based upon your interpretation, Jerry, and what you've had to say, that they could enter into these contracts, they would be completely valid and assignable. Is that correct? So I just don't see what stands in the way of impeding entering into contracts for a fair next summer.
Yeah,
And in my communications with them, we talked about it going forward. I wasn't in the office when those discussions about this fair concern came up. So,
Supervisor Montgomery, it is our understanding that the issue really rests more with the conduct of the 2015 fair. Not so much the other interim events that might be contracted for. I think they understood that those would be assignable once the county made that transition determination. I think the highest concern was around the fair and their continued operation and some of the issues of transition contracting, volunteers, and the total package that gets put together relative to the conduct of the fair. And it also, I think, is reliant then on this loan or the financial support bridge that would that's being requested to be able to have the financial viability to be able to conduct events and continue to operate into 2015.
Okay. Yes, Madeline?
Good morning, Chairman and Supervisors. My name is Madeline Miller. I was here at a previous meeting representing Roseville Community Preschool and Roseville Community School. I just wanted to express our concern that the uncertainty of going dark at the fairgrounds for our enrollment as we're enrolling new students for our schools, uncertainty about how that would affect our schools, We also hold fundraisers. The big night is a big event for our big school. We hold parent meetings there, so kind of a small issue in some respects, but big for our enrollment. So if there could be some more certainty about how that would affect the attendance at the fairground, in addition to running the 2015 fair, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. And I don't necessarily think the issue is going dark, I mean, anymore. From what I've heard of this board, the general consensus is that, you know, we don't want to go dark. I guess the question is how do we move forward? You know, and that last comment, I think, that John made with regards to the handling of the handoff, it actually made sense. And although I'm not going to make a motion here, I'm going to wait until I hear the data that we've asked you to collect for the next go-around before I, you know, make up my mind on it. So,
Thank you.
all right. Any further discussion? Yes.
So if we don't make the decision today, is it going to be on October 24th when we do have our next meeting? Is that going to give everybody time to?
Well, not much time, but enough, I believe. Our thought is that, you know, if you folks direct us to go ahead and continue to negotiate the Fourth Amendment, do some financial analysis to project what the $100,000 would mean to the county, we are preparing to come back on the 21st with a recommendation for the amendment and the loan specifically. And then certainly that is before the October 24th deadline for non-renewal is the current contract.
And that'll also provide, I know Robert's not here, and I know he's been fairly vocal about his thoughts, and that'll give him an opportunity to say, you know, what his feelings are as well. So,
My concern about that October 21st meeting is that if the parties don't come to any agreement on a Fourth Amendment, then the board may have the only choice of terminating the current contract. And so I was looking for some direction on the contract itself, terms of the contract.
well, it sounds to me like the contract is,
The amendment, I mean.
the amendment is fine and workable from what I've heard. Yeah.
If I might, I would think that another alternative that staff could prepare would be to simply extend the current deadline from October 24th. So if we're making good progress, I think that's a fallback alternative that your board could consider at your meeting on the 21st in Tahoe.
And I would encourage the association, based on what they've heard today and the concerns that we have, to really make a good faith effort to get this, the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
If Mr. Rideout can have it, we have our board meeting on the 15th of this month. So if we can have something that our board can consider at that meeting, then you would have something at your next board meeting as a decision from the board.
Okay.
What we would like, I guess and I'm speaking for all the board members, we'd just like some, an assertive statement from the supervisors stating that, and I think Mr. Holmes presented it, he doesn't want to see the fair go dark, he wants to see a fair there next year. And it was after the meeting a month ago, there were several articles in the paper, is the fair moving out of Roseville? Is it going dark? Is there going to be any fair at all? And I think we just need some kind of affirmative statement from the supervisors that, yes, we want to have a fair, we're working with the people, whether it's the association or a contractor. We all want the same thing. We want the fair to continue. It's a great tradition, and it serves thousands of people. But these newspaper articles have just, they have a...
What I would say to that is that if you want to know how we feel about it, all you have to do is pick up the phone. All of us are available.
I understand. It's just the newspapers are telling people.
It's my district. My grandfather told me a long time ago, don't believe anything you hear, anything you see, or anything you read, and only half of what you see.
Yeah, I would just second that and say take what you read in the newspapers with a grain of salt. I'm always available for direct conversations.
Especially
totally
on this
happy
issue.
to engage in
It's just the calls we've received at the fair.
Yeah.
We're questioning, should we come and talk to you about rentals for next year after reading what's in the paper. So, thank you.
Thank you.
David Attaway, Placer Valley Tourism, 508 Main Street, and I'm one of the few people that live near the fairgrounds. So, first of all, I want to congratulate Bill for all the work he's done in creating that race, and it is a phenomenal event, and people come from all over. They stay in our hotels because we represent the hotel industry of the 3 cities. And very concerned that going dark, while it might not be a reality, and I understand from their standpoint, when you're planning long-term events and when you're trying to get vendors in and participants, hesitancy or uncertainty is a negative. So the sooner you can come to some sort of appropriate transition, and we all understand it is a transition, it's just what do we need to make happen to make that transition work? Because long-term, and I will now speak to probably your other issue, was long-term, there needs to be an event center that services the county. We have a lot of events that are just beyond the fairgrounds in terms of what the fair is, but certainly provide strong economic benefit for all of our area. So we would support what you do. It may be a small investment, and as Supervisor Euler said, you're risking a relatively small amount because a lot of people that are out there are also planning crab feeds and weddings and those type of things that go and service that community. And so certainly hope that you can come up with a decision that makes it viable for this year. And certainly the long-term future of the event center is bright.
Thank you, David. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Greg Rail, 198 Wood Creek, Roseville. I've been a racer out there for 10 years. I've also been the tire and fuel vendor, souvenir vendor. Also, I had the one of the rental car businesses out at the racetrack. Just listening to some of the things, I kind of have some questions. Where did the number of 6-month period before there would be a new operator come from? Did that come from you guys, or was that from the Fair Association? Who derived that number?
Mark?
It was an estimate that I came up with based on crafting an RFP. We figured probably 2 months to figure out exactly what the mix and the scope of services would be, putting it out for 90-day solicitation, evaluating the bids, and then a contract negotiation period. So our best estimate was 6 months for that entire process.
Okay. Are you aware of anybody at this point that has shown interest in that position?
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay. Well, then I hear talk about, well, we're going to go dark as of December 31st when the association's contract's up, correct? Nobody will be running the race or the fairgrounds at that point.
No one here, just to be very clear, has said we're going to go dark. Everyone here has said very clearly that it is our intent that we do not go dark.
I understand.
What
I hear from
the question remains, if I may, because
Right.
I just want to make sure it's very clear. No one here is proposing or saying that we should go dark. What we're saying is there's a question about how we continue to operate the fair and the associated events that go on around the fair over the next year and then into the future. So just want to be super clear. We're not talking about going dark.
I understand.
At the end of this year or any year.
I understand.
Okay.
But when I hear the things that are being said, my first thought is to alleviate any chance of going dark and to alleviate the supervisors from putting up $100,000 that they may or may not get back. I think the supervisor down here said we probably won't. We'd be lucky to get $55,000 back of that. That you would expedite the transition period to not be 6 months, to spend the time instead of trying to figure out how much money we need to go to run the fair and how do we work this out. Let's put all our efforts into getting the new operator in by the end of January. Instead of 6 months, let's go 4 months. That's plenty of time for a new operator to take over the fair. Definitely enough time for the operator to take over the concerns with the racetrack. As this gentleman here said, the Fair Association can go ahead and make contracts that would carry over to the new operator. So Mr. McAnally, Mr. Jarvidon, they're good to go. Anybody else that I want to go rent a facility for my wedding or whatever, they can enter in the contract. Is that not what you stated? How that would work? Okay. I would recommend to you guys that you would find a way Not to spend $100,000, but to expedite the changeover to a new operator from 6 months.
And I think that's the goal here. I don't think anybody, wants to take as long as possible to get the process done. That's just the time, and in conjunction with our consultant, that he said that it would take to get an appropriate person, because it's a lot more than just sending out an RFP. That business has to come in, do their own assessment. They have to, crunch their own numbers to determine whether or not it's viable. So, it may take 4 months, it may take 3 months, it may take the full 6 months. But I don't think it's our desire to make it a lengthy process.
Right.
And I think, as far as the association being able to enter into contracts, they can do that right now under this agreement. So, right?
I'm not a lawyer, but that's how.
Anything else?
I thank you for your concern about the fairgrounds and the racetrack. I can see that
I just want to make it work. I know there's a lot of folks that rely on it for income, for enjoyment. We got kids that are in 4-H that, we have that commitment. That's, again, we're celebrating our agriculture, and that's a big piece of what we do. Eventually, years from now, there'll be a different activity going on there. I think that's where we're all headed, but in the interim, we've got to find a way to make it work, and I want to make sure that it works in the most efficient, effective, responsive way possible. That's it.
Thank you all.
So, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Then I guess we don't have any action to take here. We'll wait for your wisdom the next time we meet on this. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, that being said, we'll move to our 12th item, resolution terminating local emergency due to King Fire. Well, that was quick. Yeah. Mr. McEldowney.
Sir. Not at all. Chairman, board members, good morning. My name is John McEldowney, Program Manager for the Office of Emergency Services. Today I'm requesting that you adopt the attached resolution to terminate the existence of a local emergency due to the King Fire. A little bit of background. The King Fire started by arson near Pollock Pines in El Dorado County, crossed the Rubicon River into Placer County on September 17th, and in one very eventful night, actually in about a 6-hour period, it actually ran 15 miles all the way up to French Meadows Reservoir. It ultimately grew to well over 97,000 acres. This morning, I think they were calling it about 97,700 acres, with approximately 30,000 of those acres being in Placer County. It also threatened our water and power generation infrastructure owned by Placer County Water Agency. In addition, the fire presented a potentially existential, though not imminent, threat to several communities, from Michigan Bluff to Forest Hill, Alpine Meadows, Squaw Valley, and several other communities within the Lake Tahoe Basin. This fire was so large and dangerous that smoke pouring through the Sierra Nevada crest and into the Lake Tahoe Basin caused race organizers to cancel the Lake Tahoe Ironman race. Furthermore, air quality, health warnings, and advisories were regularly in effect across large portions of the county, and several schools ended up canceling classes and closing their doors in an attempt to try and mitigate the effects of smoke on children. The September 23, 2014 Placer County proclamation of a local emergency has been forwarded to the California Office of Emergency Services and could reach the governor's office for his consideration on potential, I want to emphasize the word potential, eligible response cost reimbursement under terms of the California Disaster Assistance Act. In addition, our Office of Emergency Services here in the county has forwarded an initial damage estimate to the California Office of Emergency Services for potential reimbursement consideration for the serious and long-lasting effects of the King Fire on our county. The requirements for termination of local emergencies are covered in Chapter 7 of Division 1 of Title 2 of the California Government Code, also known as the Emergency Services Act. This act states, and I quote, "The governing body shall proclaim the termination of the local emergency at the earliest possible date that conditions warrant." As of now, the King Fire is just about 100% containment. This morning was about 98%. They're expecting it to be contained sometime this week, hopefully tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. Major response activities are also winding down as well. At this time, I believe that conditions warrant termination of our emergency proclamation, and my recommendation is that your board adopt the attached resolution. There's no impact on the general fund caused by termination of the proclamation, and subject to your questions, this concludes my comments.
Supervisor Montgomery.
I just, on behalf of the residents and communities of the 5th District, really want to take the opportunity to say thank you to you. This is not to make a joke of it, truly trial by fire after Rui retired. And particularly the community outreach was very, very well done, and getting information out to folks. I did a rough count and estimated that we probably had almost 2,000 live bodies in front of us in our county meetings with our partners. Obviously, they were not county-only meetings, but the meetings that we held with our partners to get really good, valid information out to folks. Facebook, as you know, was going wild with rumor and just crazy reports of supposedly true fact. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank Terry Sayadavaldi, who also got a ton of information out on our own Facebook page to help counter the misinformation that was out there. I also just really wanted to say that on a lighter note, I didn't think I would ever actually have the opportunity to talk about crossing the Rubicon, because it actually means a point of no return where you've actually reached a tipping point. And in this case, although the fire did cross the Rubicon, it wasn't a tipping point. And though it did take a pretty good run as it moved across the Rubicon, our partners at the U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, all the other local state agencies and private fire contractors managed to stop that point of no return. And so thanks for everything you did. Thanks for bringing the initial emergency want to get it right, local state of emergency forward, and thanks for being here today and letting us know that we can cancel it. That's delightful.
Well, you're welcome, and it's really all the people that work behind me that made everything happen.
Yeah, it's in this case truly a huge group effort, but there is no one behind you except Andy. So Andy apparently has
Andy made everything happen.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
So,
I
thank
also
you.
want to just say, I appreciate what our department did, emergency services. I was getting updates 5 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, and I know I've pushed really hard for a different personnel to take us to the next level with regards to what we do. So I'm hopeful that we can get someone on that'll do even more and make us more of the premier information resource for things that are going on in the county. So thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So I guess we have a motion from Jen.
I move that we adopt the resolution to terminate the local emergency declaration.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none. Hearing no abstention. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McInerney.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And I think we are at the end of our open agenda. I'm going to turn it over to our county council to take us into closed session.
The board will now adjourn to closed session to discuss with council 2 items of existing litigation, T&S Construction versus County and Wayne Smith versus Placer County Sheriff et al. The board has returned from closed session where they discussed two matters of existing litigation with legal counsel. In the matter of TS Construction versus County of Placer, the board heard a report from their counsel and gave direction to counsel. On second matter, Wayne Smith versus Placer County Sheriff et al., the board authorized the defense and indemnity of the individual county employees named and waived any conflict with the county counsel's office representing all defendants, and that vote was on unanimous vote with Supervisor Wygant absent. That concludes the closed session report.